All right, hello, ladies and gentlemen. So, in today's episode, we interview Summit Strength client Yolanda, who has recently come back from a successful hike over to Everest Base Camp. Now, inside, she shares a few insights around how she used her training to prepare for this trip and to prepare her knees specifically for the mountains, and also shares some really interesting insights around her journey and her experience on this trip. So, really interesting episode for anyone who's aspiring to maybe hike in Nepal one day, anyone who finds their knees are holding them back and they're a little bit worried about that with their hiking, or anyone who just loves a good hiking story. So, with that being said, let's get into it. All right. Hello, Yolanda. A big welcome to the show.
Hey, Roland, thanks. It's great to be here.
So really looking forward to having a bit of a chat today. And as I was saying just before we got on, I think this is going to be such an awesome episode. Just it's going to be super inspirational for quite a few people who may be considering a similar adventure. So before we get into it, let's start with the basics and start from the top. Could you just let us know who you are, where you're from, what do you do, and what is your background in hiking?
Sure. So my name is Yolanda Bannon. I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm not from the San Francisco Bay Area. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. My father was in the U.S. Air Force, so I grew up kind of everywhere. And in my 20s and 30s, I moved and lived quite a few places. But we're settled. I'm settled here with my husband now. I run two small businesses. One of them is Tibet travel company that I run with Love Song with my husband that gives people referrals for high quality Tibetan owned travel agencies. And I also am a hypnotist and I create guided meditations for highly sensitive women. And then my background in hiking is just that something I've done and loved since maybe my 30s. I think the first time it's interesting. I think the first time I got into hiking was in my 30s, actually. When I lived in Japan, I lived in Kyoto, and I lived right next to some small hills, I just took to hiking around those hills, and I think that was the first. And ever since then, it's just been something that I love to do. Maybe one of the things I love best.
And before we started working together, what was your typical approach to training in your life?
I kind of have never had one, really. I haven't had like uh, I'm trying to think if I don't think I've ever properly trained for anything until our work together. I mean, I was in drill team in high school and maybe various little leagues. I don't know, but I just never trained. So maybe 6 months before, and I'm 63. I'm sorry, I'm 64. So just at the beginning of this year, I kind of started thinking of like, oh my gosh, I really need to start working on some strength training, and I got into kind of traditional weightlifting, and I started doing an online strength training program. But it was, it's just like you just do this today or do that today. So that, it's just kind of a general training, I guess I'd say.
And then when we were, I guess, before we started working together, what was the big goal that you had set for yourself, and what was the instigator for this particular goal?
The goal was to trek to Everest Base Camp in Nepal. And I also was very interested in going to the viewpoint that goes a little bit higher than Everest Base Camp, which is called Kalapatar. And the instigator it goes back, I would say like almost 40 years that actually in the 90s, I trekked the Annapurna circuit or part of the Annapurna circuit. And I think that got me being in Nepal that time, which was just kind of random journey. I literally spun a globe from my co-op in Berkeley, California. And I was just like, where am I going to go? What is the most weird, fascinating place I could go? I just finished grad school and my finger landed on Kathmandu. So that got me kind of uh, interested, like being there got me interested. Taking that trek got me interested in those mountains, which were just, I don't know if have you been to Nepal?
I haven't yet, to be honest. I've trained so many people for it, and it's been so high on my list, but I haven't been over there
Oh,
myself yet.
it's the mountains in Nepal. I mean, I just haven't come back. It's like I knew this, I'd seen them before, but they're just nothing like anywhere else. They're just so magnificent. So anyway, I'd always wanted to be in those mountains, and then I'd seen documentaries about climbing Everest and read on John Krakauer's book like Into Thin Air back then, and I was always just fascinated by these movies and stories I was reading about these places that became kind of like legendary in my mind, like Namche Bazaar and Tingboche and Everest Base Camp and Kalapatar and Lukla, flying into Lukla, like all that stuff just kind of got um, lodged in my brain. It's just something that I really wanted to do. So here I am, you know, over the, especially I'd say in the last 5 years, I just had really wanted to do it. I've been traveling to Tibet over the last maybe 15 years for our Tibet travel business and had been to Everest Base Camp on the Tibet side, but I'd never been on the Nepal side. So that was kind of the the impetus for wanting to go.
And then what made you, with this big goal in sights, like what made you decide to reach out for extra help with your preparations? What were the things that you felt like you needed help with?
Well, in those months, let's say, I think we started working together 8 weeks before my trip, which was kind of really tight. But in the couple of 3 months before that, I'd been trying to kind of ramp up my fitness and train, my own little version of training. And I had gotten injured also from the weight training that I was doing. I had gotten kind of an MCL strain. It wasn't like a tear or anything, but it was, it was sore and kind of hurting pretty much without me doing a big trek. So I got really nervous about my ability to do the trek given that injury. And I'd seen two different physical therapists, and I was doing my own thing, and everything was just getting really confusing. I was getting advice from this one physical therapist, advice from another physical therapist, and I was just feeling, I didn't really know what to do. So it was really kind of discombobulated about what's the best thing not to continue to hurt myself or hurt myself worse and still get stronger for the trek. And I was totally befuddled. And lucky for me, my friend Meg, who I was going on the trek with, had found and signed up with you 12 weeks before the trip. And just to be honest, I could have done it at that time, but I was too cheap. And I was just like, oh no, I'll just do it on my own. So now it's, you know, 9 weeks, 8 weeks before the trek, and I'm really worried about being able to do it. And I said, I got to do it. So I called you up.
And then after that call, and after you kind of got into things, tell us a little bit about the training that you did through Summit Strength. Like, what did your program look like?
It was, it, because I had 8 weeks, it was something that I had to commit to being, very serious about. So it was something that was, it started out being 7 days a week. And then I cut it back to six because I needed a mental day. I remember at some point I asked you, let's do six because I need one day to just kind of, do stretching or something. But I was doing strength training a few times a week. I was doing some stair work once a week. I was doing stretches once a week. I was doing some mobility work once a week. I was doing progressively longer and harder hikes with more weight. And then I was doing some loaded pack walking. I can't remember, like I probably also once a week. So, I mean, I'm not going to lie, it was intense. It was like at least well, on the non-hike days, it was at least probably it was mostly like at least an hour a day, and then on the hike days, it would be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hours, a day on those days.
Yeah, and it can always be tough on those kind of shorter term things where we're like, oh my gosh, we've only got 8 weeks to kind of get in. We kind of got to cram everything we need into this period. So it ends up being a little bit of a rush. But yeah, I'm glad you managed to squeeze it all
Well,
in. So
yeah, it was absolutely necessary. There was no getting around, you know,
yeah.
doing it. Right. Yeah.
And then in all the stuff that you were doing, was there anything in there that was, I guess, a little bit different that you hadn't really done before?
Yeah. There were a few just things that I hadn't done before. I hadn't been doing step ups or step downs, um, which were challenging because, with the knee. And I was, when I was first doing them, I was like, oh gosh, I really don't know if this is going to work. I meant the trek because it's like I knew the trek would have, up and down days, and that was just going to be, if I was having trouble just doing them. But anyway, the training was so cool that like just very gradually I was able to increase the step up so that, like increase my weights or the number that I was doing. I can't remember. And they just got, they got progressively easier and I was doing more of them. I was also, I had never done any kind of calf work or kind of ankle, strengthening or stretches or any of that. I was also, for the first time in my life, ever stretching before and after hikes. And before after my training, that was good every day. And then I think the biggest difference was that I was, when you're on your own, you don't, I'm not I don't have experience in this area. Your program was gradually increasing, so it's like you might do one kind of move and the next week you might do the same move, but you would increase the weight or the resistance. And that was, it seems obvious now that I had done it, but that was really, really helpful in my mind. Like, oh, it's actually important that gradually, pick up the weight or the resistance so that so your muscles can get stronger.
And then through the process and through the 8 weeks leading into the trip, were there any particular roadblocks which came up along the way? And if so, how did you go about overcoming them?
Yeah, there were small little things along the way, like my knee would get sore or more sore than usual. But the biggest one, and that was no big deal. I would just kind of check in with you, which was so valuable, by the way. Like just being able to check in and just say, like, hey, should I be pushing this or should I, like pull back, like what, and just get your advice. Um, but the biggest one of those happened like 3 weeks before we were leaving. I was doing some stair work and I just got this big old pain in my knee that I had not been experiencing. And I think it was actually even different than the other pains that I had had. And it just like freaked out. I'm like, oh my God, I do not have time to, you know, fix this in 3 weeks. And it was so incredibly valuable. I think it was like one of the most valuable things of the whole experience that like in that moment, and I'm sure other people have them. I'm sure, first of all, you normalized it. It was just like, I contacted you. You were just like, this is normal. And you just gave me a plan. I don't even remember what we did, but whatever you said, I just did exactly. And I think it was some combination of, if I remember, it was just like, we're not going to totally shut down everything, but at the same time, we're going to back off a few things. And it was great. And like within a few days or a week, I was back on track. And that was like really, really helpful. I remember talking to Meg about that and just saying like, thank you for recommending this guy because that alone was so helpful.
And that's exactly it. Like those situations where you're just a few weeks out from a trip and you're kind of ramping things up, you're challenging the body, and then kind of something gets uncomfortable or goes wrong. It can be so tough to navigate because there's like the typical solution is we'll either sort of say, okay, if this was everyday life and I didn't have a trip in front of me, I would just do nothing and I would just completely give myself 2 or 3 or 4 weeks to rest and everything will settle. And that's
Yes.
often what people get recommended. But then a lot of
Yeah.
people are like, oh my gosh, I got this trip. So I've got to be fit for it. So what I'll do instead, I'll just ignore it and I'll keep on pushing, pushing, pushing. And that in itself is just like obviously not ideal. So yeah, finding that balance where we can kind of uh, just keep on moving forward, but respect the recovery in that can be tricky sometimes. But I'm glad that it kind of got you, where you need to be through that period. So
Yeah.
with all that being said, we talked about the training, we talked about the preparations. Now let's talk about the trip. Tell us, how did the trip go? How did the trail go? Give us the rundown.
So, in a word, it was really, really hard, really, really amazing. It was just like I I had actually, read a lot about, the Everest Base Camp Trek on the Nepal side before, but I was not prepared for the number. Like somebody wrote, like, so period, many period, steps period. It's just like on the way up, on the way down. Every day you're going up and down, like up, like down to the river, up to the thing, and it's just a lot of steps. So it was honestly physically more. I mean, I knew it was going to be physically demanding, but it was physically more demanding than I thought it would be, just because of all those steps. Like if I'm hiking in California, or like, oh, to be honest, any other place I've hiked, there'll be smooth sections. When I say smooth, it's like, I don't know, like in Yosemite, there's something called 4 Mile hike, and it's like very steep with a lot of switchbacks, but you're walking on a pretty smooth path. So these were just rocky, uneven. So you were constant up and down. You were constantly balancing on, you know, on things. So like on the knee, it was so hard. And my knee just stood up like a champion because of our training. One of the reasons that I think that happened is because I did another piece of advice that seems so simple that you gave, but was really a saver for me, was you in different parts of different videos, on your program, you talk about speed and how that could be a factor in an injury, and it just never had occurred to me like that. I've never been a fast hiker. I'm always pretty slow, but I purposely, especially on the downs, like on the ups, it was fine, but on the downs, I really made a big, like a conscious decision to go very slowly, even though like psychologically that was hard because I was with, Meg and my guide are both faster than me, but I just, I talked to them about it. They were cool, and I was just like, I need to go slow, you know. And I think that made a big difference. But so for the most part, I would just say, as hard as this trail was, which is like definitely one of the hardest trails I've ever been on, the it's the hardest trail I've ever been on. You know, I was, I was able to, I didn't have any pain. I think one day, maybe 3 days from the end or something, I took a painkiller because another piece of advice, it was like kind of prophylactically, I was like, I'm feeling a little, it's not feeling good. So I'm just going to take painkiller, early in the day. But despite going up, 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 down, 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 up, 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 down, 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 every single day for 16 days, my knees were just, you know, uh, I have arthritis in my knees, so they were like kind of sore-ish in a normal way, like, but there was no pain to speak of. So I was incredibly grateful for it. Like, I think every single day I was just like, Meg, I can't believe it. My knees are like holding up so well. Yeah.
And then let's talk about the challenges. And you kind of touched on a few little bits and pieces there, but what were the major challenges you faced along the trip or along the trail?
The challenges were the steps, just like, psychologically, it's like, it's pretty rough to go like you know, let's say it was kind of the shortest day was 4 hours, and that was shorter by far than most. So it's like between 6 and 12 hours of going, pretty steeply up and down all the time. Very rarely would you be going solid. So just psychologically, that was a challenge. It was a psychological challenge to feel like I was slow, and the kind of advice and training that you had given in your videos really helped. Just I just had that in my mind all the time. Like, it's okay. I need to go slow. It's obviously better if I go slow than if I get injured. Also, we had little bits of, like, Meg had a pretty bad sinus infection, and uh, some altitude induced apnea that was really interfering with her sleep. So that was making, I mean, she's a beast, so that was making it, she still kicked my butt, like, even though she had those problems. But that was a challenge. And then, just generally speaking, we went in October, like late October, early November, like mid to 16 days, like from, late October. And everyone will say it never rains. It's not going to rain. Bring your raincoat, but you won't need it. It's like there was a cyclone in India that caused rain for 5 days during that time. And that just sucked. But fortunately, we got the rain out in the early part of our trip. And so on the fifth day, when we were getting to this place called Dingboche, which is where the real, just truly magnificent views start to happen. So we were just in clouds, and sometimes just like freezing, driving rain, just horrible stuff. It laid down this beautiful layer of snow, like on the mountains. And so on the fifth day, when we woke up, or fifth or sixth day, when we woke up in Dingboche, we had just been in clouds. And then all of a sudden, they were just these magnificent mountains, just like we were just surrounded by them. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, fantastic. And then I guess after this hike, obviously you've been on such a big adventure, you've gone through a lot, and like, and in such a beautiful part of the world. Like, at the end, how did you feel? Like, what was going through your head, and did you do anything in particular to celebrate?
We, I've, I felt, I felt a lot of satisfaction that we had done it. I felt grateful for this experience that I dreamed of for so long. Um, and it's funny, on the mountain. We celebrated at Everest Base Camp. I remember Meg and I just like hugged for a long time, and just, we sat, and I think we recorded a little video, just like, what we were experiencing, like what it felt like to be there after thinking and dreaming of it for so long. And we were actually there, and it was just spectacularly beautiful. And then Kalabatar, that viewpoint is even, I mean, it's like another world. I've seen some very beautiful places in my life. I've never experienced anything like the alpenglow and the dawn rising. You start in the dark, walking at 17,000 feet, and you end up at like 18,500 at dawn. And I've never seen any or experienced anything like that. The next day, I remember, and I just cried like a baby, like really ugly crying, like a Calcutta, because there was just so much. Um, there was so much joy and satisfaction, and it was hard. So like there was relief. And then I'll also just share with you that with my clients and people on my email list, I had the sensitive women I work with. I had written and asked people if they wanted to send me names of people that they wanted to say a prayer for, and I got 300 names, and just people in having all kinds of experiences, like, new babies, people with cancer, people with challenges in their marriage. There's all kinds of, world peace. People were praying for all kinds of things. And I had written these, I made a list of all these people. And as I kept them with me, and I reflected on them, and like sent them good wishes like the whole way. And then a few days before Kalapatar, actually at Namche Bazaar, we bought prayer flags. And it's a custom in Tibet that I brought in there too. You can write people's names on the prayer flag. So we bought a bunch of prayer flags, wrote these 300 names on these prayer flags, and then strung them at the top of Kalapatar. And so that was just honestly like made the whole experience like so much more meaningful and powerful. Just like and if people don't know, like Tibetan prayer flags are called wind horses, and the idea is that they have prayers printed on them as well as the prayers that we were wishing, and the idea is that they just blow on the wind all around, the world out into the air. So that was really precious moment for me.
And then now that you're home and now that you're settled and now that, this amazing trip is, behind you but not forgotten. What is the plan of attack for your hiking moving forward? Have you got any particular goals or how you're going to approach things or what's ahead?
Well, my first thought is I just want to I just enjoy hiking now because it's so easy. I'm not hiking at like 16, 17, 18,000 feet. So it's just like you can just go up really fast and easy. That's all good. Joking aside, I just remember that people seeing before I went that people had done the trek a lot of times, the Everest Base Camp Trek multiple times. And I remember thinking, even before I went, I thought like that was just insane. Why would you? It's like once in a lifetime experience, but I knew it would be hard. Like, why would you ever want to do that again? And especially when we finished, I was like, there is no way I'm doing this again. But like, now that several weeks have passed, I'm already starting to think like, I've heard about the long time trek, or we didn't get to do the Gokyo part. It's like, oh, maybe we'll do the Gokyo Lake. So it's just like that kind of amnesia, I guess. So that says like, that might be fun to do that. And if I did that, I would certainly call you up before, longer ahead of time.
Yeah, a few more weeks.
Yes, yes.
How good. And then I guess, yeah, if anyone was listening to this, and as I said before, I think like a lot of people who listen to this podcast definitely have, a trip like this on their 1 day list, or, they're aspiring towards it at some stage. If anyone was considering this particular adventure, is there any specific advice you would give them?
Yeah, if they can afford it, hire you for personal training, the which is what I did. If they can't get into a community like yours, or if they can find some other one, like, to get the motivation and training, like, so much of your information was available also like on the videos. There was nothing like having my personalized, I wish, I wish there were, but there's nothing like having that personalized program. And to say like, okay, week one you're doing this, week one, day one you're doing this, week, day two, like having all that was just uh, incredibly valuable. I'm not sure where I would have been physically and mentally for the trek if I hadn't done that. Yeah.
Fantastic. And I think this has been an awesome, awesome, awesome episode. Just getting the chance to dive into this and yeah, just hearing a little bit more about what you've kind of gone through on this trail, what you've experienced, and everything there. So I guess before we finish things up and wrap things up, is there anything else that I guess we haven't had a chance to cover today, or anything else you'd like to add before we finish things up?
Well, just reflecting on this as a training experience, the thing that comes to mind is, um, even if I'm 64, I have arthritic knees and had, you know, a not severe, but also not insignificant injury before I started with you. So, and I wouldn't have thought that I could, I think many people would think you can't do an Everest Base Camp Trek in that situation. But it was like, I absolutely could. And I did it. My niece did it with flying colors. Like, there was like no problem. So I guess the thing would be like, even if you have an injury, things, it could still be possible, especially if you have more time than I had, which is like, I was just like at the 8 week mark. So if you had, 12 weeks or more, like I think you could really do it. And the other thing is I just, while I contacted you after our trip, I was so grateful for your help, so grateful for, the program. And it also just made it like, it wasn't fun every day to do that training, but generally speaking, it was fun. It was just like I felt good. I felt like I was accomplishing something. I knew I was making progress. My body felt really good, like I was getting stronger all the time. And I'm just forever grateful for that, for helping me get that dream.
Amazing. And from my side of things, it was such a pleasure having you on board all the training. And I'm so happy that it kind of paid off for you, in the mountains. And I just want to say thank you so much for coming on this podcast today and kind of sharing your journey and sharing your thoughts, because I think there's been an awesome episode. And I think a lot of people are getting some really, really good value out of it. So thank you so much for coming on.
It's my pleasure, Rowan. Thank you.
So there we go, guys. I really do hope you've enjoyed today's episode, and I really do hope it's maybe inspirational for a few people who may be dreaming about hiking in Nepal one day in the future. Last thing I will say is, if you are in a position similar to Yolanda, maybe you've got a big high altitude hike that you want to prepare for. Maybe you've got some knee pain which is holding you back or getting in the way of your preparations, or whatever may be. If you were interested in learning a little bit more about the program that Yolanda used to get herself in this type of position for her trip, I would love to chat with you. If you want to find out more, you can go to summitstrength.com.au/online. Now, on that page, there's a big video, talks through our program in a bit of detail. And if it does sound like something you want to learn a little bit more about, there's a link on that page. You can book a free call with our team. We can sit down, hear about you, your hiking, your goals, and your needs, and ultimately see if and how we may be able to help you out. So if you want to find out more, go to summitstrength.com.au/online, and we can take it from there. So with that being said, thank you so much for listening. I really do hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll talk to you very, very soon. Bye.